Good day, I'm Dominic F. Gomez, and for today, I will be presenting my study entitled Examining ASEAN Centrality Amidst the Sino-American Rivalry in Southeast Asia. The following will be the corresponding sequence and structure of my presentation. The primordial goal of this study is to answer the impending question: how can ASEAN maintain its concept of centrality despite rising tensions and competing Sino-American influence in Southeast Asia? To substantially answer this question, it is vital to explain and illustrate the concept of ASEAN centrality. Second, to identify and examine the challenges of ASEAN centrality. Third, to recognize the significance of Southeast Asia in the context of the Sino-American rivalry. Fourth, to distinguish the collective perceptions of ASEAN states vis-a-vis the Sino-American rivalry in Southeast Asia. And finally, to provide feasible and pragmatic recommendations to ASEAN officials to further strengthen the concept of ASEAN centrality. This study will particularly argue that ASEAN must pursue ASEAN-led mechanisms through multilateralism and minilateralism, or the ASEAN minus X formula with the great powers and likewise with the middle powers in the region to maintain ASEAN's regional preponderance in Southeast Asia. Subsequently, the study will fundamentally argue that ASEAN must espouse a balance of influence towards the United States and China by pursuing with and engaging the great powers through a neutralist hedging approach and all multidimensional frontiers in Southeast Asia. Therein lies the question: what is ASEAN centrality? As defined by the ASEAN Charter, ASEAN centrality is based on the notion that ASEAN is the primary driving force in its relations and its cooperation with external partners in a regional architecture that is open, transparent, and inclusive. Consequently, the ASEAN Charter stipulates that ASEAN centrality must remain evident in the political, economic, social, and cultural realms in ASEAN's external relations while engaging in pursuing an outward looking, inclusive, and non discriminatory approach. ASEAN centrality, therefore, is identified as a process of engagements with external partners in the regional architecture. Another significant literature on ASEAN centrality is founded in the exhaustive report of Dr. Evan Laksamana published in 2017 entitled Southeast Asian Perspectives on US-China Competition. Dr. Laksamana clarifies that ASEAN centrality is not to be exchanged with or associated to consensus. The author expounds that consensus in ASEAN is only one out of the several preconditions for or pathways to ASEAN centrality. Dr. Laksamana describes that ASEAN centrality is an ongoing process of continuous engagements with external partners than an outcome or an end state. Hence, Dr. Laksamana argues that ASEAN centrality is not a matter of ASEAN being central in nature. Rather, one must examine to what extent and how must ASEAN maintain its centrality. Moreover, Amitav Acharya, in a seminal monograph published in 2017 entitled The Myth of ASEAN Centrality, ascertains that ASEAN centrality is interconnected to several key concepts, particularly with ASEAN as the leader, the driver, the architect, the institutional hub, the vanguard, the nucleus, and as the fulcrum of the regional processes and institutional designs in the Asia Pacific region. Acharya clarifies that ASEAN's centrality is likened to the great power relations than ASEAN's projection of unity and identity as a regional organization. Furthermore, Acharya postulates that ASEAN centrality is built on the notion that ASEAN is the first viable regional organization in Asia. Consequently, he claims that ASEAN centrality means that Southeast Asia is at the core of Asian discussions and interactions on evolving norms and mechanisms for regional cooperation. Overall, Acharya defines that ASEAN centrality as a concept means that ASEAN lies and must remain at the core of Asian Asia Pacific institutions. Against this backdrop, ASEAN centrality as a regional notion in the Asia Pacific landscape has been confronting impediments on all multi-sectoral frontiers. With this, Acharya in the same monograph elucidates the following four priority points that ASEAN, as a regional organization, must thoroughly address and respond to. First, diminishing intra-ASEAN cohesion, wherein the ASEAN member states must be held responsible for organizational setbacks, such as the ASEAN member states' divergences, especially in the South China Sea disputes. Aggravating this regional concern is the expansion of tasks in ASEAN, particularly with ASEAN's acceptance of addressing evolving political, security, and environmental issues. Acharya argues that ASEAN's multidimensional focus on these issues have been encumbering the regional grouping given ASEAN's limited institutional capacity, which has made collaboration among the ASEAN member states challenging more than ever. Second, ASEAN's neutrality poses as a challenge to ASEAN centrality. Acharya associates ASEAN's neutrality to the regional organization's hesitancy in selecting sides in the great power rivalry. ASEAN has established its regional credibility and reputation by carrying out its functions as an honest broker. However, this repute of ASEAN as an honest broker has been gradually waning due to the US China rivalry in Southeast Asia. Third, China's continuous expansionist vision and regionalist approach in Southeast Asia are challenges to ASEAN centrality. China has shifted its focus from an ASEAN centric regionalism in the 1990s. Today, China is pursuing a China centric approach, particularly the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank or AIIB and the Belt and Road Initiative or BRI. Finally, the decline of the US led international order under President Donald Trump challenges ASEAN centrality. During his term, President Trump rejected numerous multilateral trade agreements in exchange for bilateral deals, wherein the United States benefited from and acquired greater leverage for Washington. In effect, these actions by President Trump threatens ASEAN's open regionalism, which undermines the essence of ASEAN centrality. By and large, Acharya accentuates that there is no ASEAN centrality without the coexistence of ASEAN unity and ASEAN neutrality. Now that the study has rationalized the definition and elaborated the challenges being faced by ASEAN centrality, therein lies the question: what is the significance of Southeast Asia in the Sino-American rivalry? This is fundamentally pronounced in the book of David Shambo, published in 2021, entitled Where Great Powers Meet: America and China in Southeast Asia. Shambo illustrates that Southeast Asia is of geographical strategic importance, with the South China Sea and the Straits of Malacca and the nexus of the Indo-Pacific region located at the heart of South Asia, East Asia, and Australasia. Southeast Asia possesses extensive attributes and opportunities that are sought after by the major powers, and in this context, by the United States and the People's Republic of China. Chambaud observes that Southeast Asian states are vigilant towards intervention and manipulation of external powers. Hence, they remain cautious of the United States and China. Over the years, the comprehensive competition between Beijing and Washington has been gradually progressing in Southeast Asia. Such Sino-American rivalry intensified following the pivot or rebalance to Asia policy of President Barack Obama in 2012. This pivot policy of President Obama, in effect, motivated Beijing to increase China's influence and presence in multiple facets within the Southeast Asian states and within the region by pursuing peripheral diplomacy, wherein Beijing developed a renewed prioritization to Southeast Asia by implementing regional diplomatic, security, cultural, and economic initiatives to regain its trust with Southeast Asian states. Chambaud observes that Southeast Asian states have become more closer to China's geo-economic, geopolitical, and geostrategic realm. Conversely, Southeast Asians perceive President Obama's pivot and rebalance strategy in the region as rhetoric and an empty cannon. These sentiments were aggravated after the Obama administration failed to confront China on its building of artificial islands in the South China Sea in failure to support the Philippines' landmark victory on the ruling of the Arbitral Tribunal at The Hague in Netherlands, which invalidated China's nine-dash line claims in the South China Sea. Coupled with President Trump's America First rhetoric, this led the Southeast Asians to perceive Washington as an isolationist state. With this, observers and scholars in the region perceive that there is a shift in the power and influence from the United States to China. This gravitational shift of the Southeast Asian states towards China or bandwagoning reflects the balance of influence of Southeast Asia towards Washington and Beijing. Chambaud postulates that Southeast Asian states have mastered the art of hedging and shifting alignments. Hedging behavior is more neutralist, ambiguous, and flexible to avoid becoming overly dependent on external powers. On the other hand, alignment behavior accepts to a certain extent of dependency and aligns to a smaller country with a larger power. In essence, Chambaud argues that there has been no display of explicit balancing behavior among the Southeast Asian states towards the United States and China. Now that we have identified the Southeast Asian states' behavioral shifts towards Washington and Beijing, moving forward, this study will examine the following caveats in the Sino-American rivalry as distinguished by Chambaud. First, the US-China competition involves the ASEAN states and other regional powers or middle states such as Japan, India, Australia, the European Union, and Russia. These regional middle powers have respective interests and likewise operate within their own agency. Hence, they serve as buffer states in the great power rivalry. Second, the US-China competition is the opposite of the Cold War. China advances its own position as opposed to countering the United States' action in the region, which is also known as soft rivalry or soft competition, wherein these two great powers are shadow boxing and use different strategies in pursuit of their goals. For instance, China's economic might compared to the United States' military might has been prominent in Southeast Asia. Washington operates on autopilot mode, wherein the United States acts towards global movements based on the action of its long-term partnerships, while as China maneuvers in gray zone across regions and states that have been seemingly neglected by the United States, such as in Central Asia, Africa, and Central Europe. Be that as it may, the Sino-American competition has yet to evolve into an action-reaction, tit-for-tat, and zero-sum geostrategic rivalry. Given these caveats, Chambaud enumerates the following findings on the Sino-American rivalry in Southeast Asia. First, China is broadening and deepening its presence in all Southeast Asian states, while the United States remains neglectful and static. Second, there's a predominant narrative in Southeast Asia that China is the inevitable dominant power and the United States is on the verge of regional decline. Chambaud emphasizes that the United States is an underappreciated power that holds more comprehensive power in Southeast Asia than China, which is regarded as an overestimated power. Moreover, Washington's presence has evidently diminished in Southeast Asia, and Beijing maintains an immense influence in the region. Given the Southeast Asian states' national sovereignty, its relations with the United States and with the regional middle powers, therefore, Southeast Asia cannot be considered as China's sphere of influence. Chambaud postulates that the winner in the Sino-American rivalry is Southeast Asia, for they maximize benefits from the great powers while successfully adapting their traditional hedging strategies to balance the United States and China in the region. Despite the Southeast Asian states bandwagoning in establishing closer alignments with China, several officials in the region view a shift in the balance of influence between Beijing and Washington. Chambaud posits that there are several factors that will contribute to the distancing of the Southeast Asian states from China in the years ahead. First consideration is the United States. Chambaud explicates that Southeast Asian observers recognize Washington's diminishing power and influence in the region. However, the author contends that this is a misperception. The diplomatic, cultural, security, and economic impact of the United States in Southeast Asia remains unprecedented as of present. and is arguably greater to that of China, especially in the trade and diplomatic sectors. However, in 2020, Southeast Asians view the United States in a deep and prolonged state of regional decline as an external power. Second element is China. Shambo elucidates that Beijing has been over-demanding in character and even dictatorial in its interactions with Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. To this day, Southeast Asians have ingrained post-colonial identities and reacts to external powers in the region that aims to form asymmetrical relationships with arrogance. Correspondingly, Southeast Asians also remember China's subservient policies and actions in the region during the 1960s and 1970s, wherein Beijing supported Communist Party insurgencies across the region. Thus, Shambo explains that the Southeast Asian states must navigate and establish closer relations with China while not being over-dependent on Beijing. The third component is ASEAN's high degree of economic dependence on China. Hence, ASEAN must moderate their economic linkages. Yet, as Shambo observes, ASEAN cannot escape their economic reliance on Beijing. Fourth factor is regional middle powers in Southeast Asia that assist ASEAN from being confined in a Sino-American rivalry. Japan is deemed as a significant player in the region, principally due to its economic, diplomatic, and cultural exchanges in Southeast Asia. Moreover, Tokyo has bolstered its security engagements with ASEAN, and arguably, as Shambo emphasizes, Japan has far more soft power to that of China. To some extent, India is expanding its position in Southeast Asia with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Act East policy to promote economic, diplomatic, and social cultural relations in the Asia Pacific region. On the Northeast Asian realm, South Korean President Moon Jae-in's New South policy aims to further connect Seoul to ASEAN and likewise expand South Korea's economic influence in the region. Furthermore, Australia deemed that it has a special relationship with Southeast Asian states, mainly because of its geographic proximity and security and commerce engagements with the Southeast Asian states. Additionally, Russia has made significant strides to establish its role in Southeast Asia, wherein Moscow expanded its arms sales, trade, and energy cooperation with the ASEAN states. With Southeast Asia's gravitational shift towards China, the four factors will plausibly alter regional behaviors and movements in the future. At this point, it is imperative to this study to identify the perceptions of the ASEAN states in the context of the Sino-American rivalry. Shambo posits that most of the ASEAN states hedge to maintain their independence, leverage benefits from such hedging behavior while avoiding becoming overly dependent, and in engaging bilaterally with Beijing and Washington, and multilaterally with regional powers such as Australia, India, Japan, and South Korea in Southeast Asia through the auspices of ASEAN Centrality. ASEAN states perceive China as overtly close and overtly omnipresent in the region due to Beijing's tribute system, which is deemed as a non-coercive trading system for a submissive independent relationship. Despite the increasing economic and social cultural linkages of ASEAN states with China, majority of the Southeast Asians remain ambivalent on their country's respective reverence to Beijing. Likewise, ASEAN states are gravely concerned on China's real estate properties, financial provisions of the Belt and Road Initiative, and the rising economic debt on China. Notwithstanding Beijing's continuous building of artificial islands and militarization of the South China Sea, and China's disconcerting naval presence in Southeast Asia are also espousing widespread anxieties and apprehensions among the ASEAN states. On the other hand, the ASEAN states remain ambivalent towards the United States, primarily because Southeast Asians associate and characterize Washington with its imperialist past, which reminds these countries of their colonialist history and nationalist plight. Put essentially, the ASEAN states share a common perception towards the United States and China in Southeast Asia, a long-standing and deeply rooted ambivalence to Washington and Beijing in the region. Moving forward, Shambo examines the strengths and weaknesses of the United States and China towards its engagements and interactions with the Southeast Asian states. Since 2017, Southeast Asian states have gravitated towards China due to Beijing's increasing position and influence in the region. China has remained as an economic power, and Beijing's diplomatic influence are arguably greater in Southeast Asia than Washington. China's core strengths are its geographic proximity and its financial capabilities. Beijing provides ASEAN with economic sustenance and infrastructure projects, as evidenced in the Belt and Road Initiative. On the other hand, China's weaknesses are its geographical proximity, which is close and overbearing, expansive South China Sea claims such as the Nine Dash Line, and diplomatic manipulation of ASEAN through public diplomacy or covert operations by employing persuasion, inducement, or coercion to shape public opinion. On the contrary, the United States' greatest strength is its hard military power as a leading provider of security assistance to Southeast Asian militaries, specifically in terms of training, doctrine, weapon supply, among many other support areas. Moreover, Washington's soft power appeals such as media, movies, sports, higher education, technology, and investment are greater than that of Beijing's regional social cultural influence in Southeast Asia. However, the United States' weaknesses as compared to China are as follows. Washington's geographical distance, impatience with the modalities of the ASEAN way, and inadequate government funds to equal to that of China's investment in infrastructure projects. The Sino-American rivalry is far from being another Cold War, for the great power contestation is not yet a zero-sum, action-reaction, and tit-for-tat competition between the United States and China in Southeast Asia. Given this occurrence of soft rivalry between the great powers, coupled with Washington and Beijing's competitive coexistence over influence in the region, such strategic competition between the United States and China in this regard necessitates a projection of balance of influence from the Southeast Asian states. The Sino-American rivalry in Southeast Asia poses as a challenge for Southeast Asian governments and for ASEAN to maneuver between the great powers, maintain their independence of action, and protect their national sovereignty. Chambaud recommends that Southeast Asian states, therefore, must exercise their own agency and pursue their conventional and neutralist hedging strategies towards the United States and China in the multifaceted realms, particularly in the diplomatic, economic, technology, security, information domain, and social cultural dimensions, while preventing overdependency in their external affairs with Washington and Beijing. In doing so, Southeast Asian states will ensure a balance of influence without becoming overly reliant on the United States and China. On the same note, Southeast Asian states must strengthen linkages with the middle powers in the region, such as Australia, Japan, India, and South Korea through bilateral, multilateral, and unilateral means. Hence, ASEAN must engage with external powers in Southeast Asia, specifically by employing the ASEAN minus X formula in all multi-sectoral fronts with like-minded states in the region. Such proposal is pertinently articulated in a substantial commentary of Ralph Emmers published in 2017 entitled ASEAN minus X, Should This Formula Be Extended? The ASEAN minus X formula is applied in economic agreements, wherein the ASEAN minus X formula enables two or more ASEAN member states to move forward given that the remaining ASEAN member states will follow their lead. As defined in Article 21.2 of the ASEAN Charter, ASEAN permits a subsidiary group to proceed with its economic initiatives without the need for the participation of the remaining ASEAN member states. MS recommends that ASEAN must consider the expansion of the ASEAN minus X formula in the consensus decision-making process beyond traditional security challenges such as preventive diplomacy and counterterrorism, among many other security facets. This can be done while preserving ASEAN's institutional approach of consensus to bolster ASEAN's responsiveness and effectiveness in addressing regional security concerns. In sum, Emmers recognizes that ASEAN must also consider making the necessary amendments to the ASEAN Charter to extend the ASEAN minus X formula, specifically in addressing regional security challenges and expanding the formula to counter terrorism and preventive diplomacy is the right path to take for ASEAN as a regional organization. Indeed, Southeast Asia will and continue to remain as a geostrategic epicenter and main theater of the Sino-American geopolitical rivalry. China is perceived to be pursuing its ultimate desire of a China dream, that is to peacefully emerge in Southeast Asia, establish multi-sectoral linkages with the Southeast Asian states, while taking great advantage of the United States' declining presence and stronghold in the region. For some scholars and pundits, these incremental practices of salami slicing tactics of China rather than confronting the United States are highly evident. However, there are also perceptions of Beijing simply coexisting with the United States in Southeast Asia. Despite these contending perspectives, ASEAN must uphold ASEAN centrality by pursuing ASEAN-led mechanisms and engaging with the great powers, middle powers, and developing powers in the region by reinvigorating the ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asian Summit, the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, and the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus. While doing so, ASEAN must reinforce the vigor and dynamism of the ASEAN minus X formula, wherein ASEAN, as a regional organization, will certainly maintain its relevance while upholding its time honored principles amidst the Sino American rivalry in Southeast Asia. Certainly, the Sino American rivalry will continue to shape the contours of the regional security architecture in Southeast Asia and likewise will remain prominent and indispensable in Southeast Asian debates and discussions of international relations today and most conceivably in the years ahead. Moving forward, these are my respective references for my study. Marami pong salamat at mabuhay po ang ASEAN.